Hello, we have been going through a series of videos on how to use Power BI and Power Query based on the dashboard in a day dataset. And we've got to the point where we're talking about the database operations that you can do inside Power Query. Power Query allows you to do two different kinds of database operations, which it calls append and merge. And it's annoying, but in a database system, those wouldn't be called that. They would be called union queries and join queries. So before we continue with our practical work with our dashboard in a day dataset, what I'd like to do is to explain how Power BI's merge queries work. So in database language, the different types of join, and one reason they're more complex than union queries or append queries is that there are 6 different types of join. So I'm going to show you with a very simple example how the 6 different types of join work, and then we'll be in a position to understand the practical stuff that comes later. So I have 2 very small tables. I've got an orders table on the left and I've got an employees table on the right, and I'd like you to imagine that that is all there is. So we've just got 7 records in our orders table, which are the ones you can see, and 5 records in our employees table. We have a relationship between the orders table and the employees table, and we'll talk about relationships in a lot more detail coming up in a few videos time. But let's just say it is a many-to-one relationship from the orders table to the employees table. So the arrow between the 2 tables represents the relationship. The star on the left-hand end of the arrow means that's the many end of the relationship. The one on the other end shows it's the one end. And what that's really saying is that at the one end in the employees table, the employee ID is unique. Each one of those numbers in the employee ID column only occurs once, and that's what allows us to look up the name of one of the employees given their ID. But on the left-hand side of the table, the left-hand side of the relationship, the many end of the relationship, we can have the employee IDs occurring more than once, because, for example, whenever Margaret Peacock, who has an employee ID of 4, makes a sale, she will write down her employee ID of 4 in the orders table on the left, and so we get lots of occurrences of 4 showing all the different sales that Margaret Peacock has made. So what we're going to do then is to work out what the inner join of these 2 tables is. Okay, so underneath I have a blank table here, and I'm going to fill in this table with the record set that I would get if I did an inner join of the 2 tables at the top. So how do we do it? To work out the inner join of the 2 records, what we're going to do is to iterate through the records in the left-hand table one at a time. So we start with the top record and we ask ourselves, with that record, is there or is there not a matching record with the same employee ID in the employees table? And the answer to that is no, there isn't, because it has an employee ID of 6 and there's no 6 in the employee ID column on the right. So this first record in the orders table doesn't give us any data in our inner join. We throw it away. Now we move on to the next record on the left hand side. So the next record has an employee ID of 4, and again we ask ourselves, is there or is there not a matching record in the employees table with an employee ID of 4? And the answer, of course, is yes, there is. The employee ID of 4 appears in the employees table, and that represents Margaret Peacock. So what we can do to get the first record of our inner join is to combine the data from the left hand side and the data from the right hand side where those 2 records match, and that gives us this record. So the employee ID is 4, and then we can read off the last name and first name of the person involved from the employees table on the right, and fill in the order ID and the customer ID data from the orders table on the left. So now we've got our first record. Good, okay, so now what we're going to do is move on to the third record on the left, and again that has an employee ID of 4, so the answer is yes again. There is a matching record on the right, and again of course that's Margaret Peacock. So combining those two pieces of data, that gives us a second record in our inner join, and the only bits that are different from before are the order ID and the customer ID that come from the orders table. And we continue doing that. So next record from the left, this has an employee ID of 3. Is there a matching record on the right? Yes there is. That's Janet Leveling. So now we combine those two pieces of data to get our third record in the inner join, and move on to the fifth record on the left. That's got an employee ID of 2. Is there a matching record? Yes there is. That represents Andrew Fuller. So now we can add our fourth record in the inner join. So the employee ID is 2. The Fuller Andrew comes from the right hand side. The order ID and the customer ID values come from the left hand side. Next record on the left. Is there or is there not a matching record on the right? Well, this time the employee ID is 8 and we don't have an employee with an ID of 8. So again, that record doesn't give us anything in our inner join. That gets thrown away. And finally, we're down to our last record on the left with an employee ID of 4. And that, of course, is another Margaret Peacock. That gives us our last record in the inner join data set, and we're done. So that table at the bottom is the inner join of the two tables that we had previously. Then also we have other types of join. We have left outer join, we have a right outer join, we have a full outer join, and then we've got two more exotic things called left anti and right anti joins. So let's take things one stage at a time. First of all, we'll work out what the left outer join is. And I think the easiest way to understand this is that the left outer join consists of all the records that we had with the inner join, plus the extra records that would come from the left table that did not give us anything in the inner join. So I could just add these first few records that came from the inner join. That's what we got from the inner join, and now we're going to iterate through the left hand table one more time and check whether we've left out anything from the left hand table in our inner join records. So if we start at the beginning, is that one left out, or did that already give us some data in our inner join? Yes, that record was left out. That didn't give us any data in our inner join because it's got an employee ID of 6, which didn't match anything in the employee ID column in the employees table. So that gives us some extra data in our outer join. That gives us partial data where the employee ID can be filled in, the order ID and the customer ID can be filled in, but of course we can't fill in the last name and the first name because we don't have anything matching in the employees table. So those fields in our left outer join record set would be null, blank. Fine, so we continue iterating then through the left hand side, through the left hand table. That one, we've already got that one in our inner join, and that one, and that one, and that one. This one though is also data that was not included in the inner join because it's got an employee ID of 8 that's not included in the employees table. That doesn't match anything in the employees table. So again, that gives us an extra partial record in our left outer join table. We can't fill in the last name and first name because we don't have anything matching on the right hand side, but we can fill in the order ID and the customer ID. Finally, go down to the last record on the left, and we've already got that from the inner join records. So that then is the left outer join of those two tables. The right outer join you get just the same way. You take the records that come from the inner join and then consider whether there are any employees in the employees table that don't match any orders on the left, and add their partial data sets to your right outer join. The full outer join represents all of the records that you have from the inner join, plus all the records from the left that didn't match anything on the right, plus all the records from the right that didn't match anything on the left. And then we've got these two exotic types of join called left anti and right anti. So we've actually got 6 different types of join altogether. Well, quite often in this context, people use Venn diagrams to help us to work out which record sets we're talking about. So let's have a look at these pictures here. So using Venn diagrams, if I think of the left circle as representing the left table and the right circle meaning the right table, the inner join can be represented by the Venn diagram at the top, where we're talking about the intersection of those two circles. The left outer join is represented by all the records from the left hand side, but we leave out any records from the right hand side that didn't match. The other way around for the right outer join. The full outer join is like everything, so that's the records that matched in the middle, like the inner join here, plus the extra ones on the left, plus the extra ones on the right. And now finally these two anti-joins. The left anti-join is the records on the left that don't match anything on the right, and the right anti-join is all the records on the right that don't match anything on the left. So at this point, when I'm teaching courses about this stuff, somebody almost always says, well, this is really complicated, but how do I know which type of join to use? Okay, I can just about understand which is which, but how do I know whether I should be using a left outer join or a right anti or what? How do I understand what kind of join to use? The answer to that is it depends on the business question. So you need to think about how your data works and what it actually means to have a record, for example, on the left that doesn't have anything matching on the right. So we could go back to our data set here and just imagine, make up some scenario that explains why it might be that we have orders appearing in the orders table on the left that don't match anything on the right, with no matching employee on the right. So I'm just going to make this up. What we could say is that where we have written an employee ID on the left hand table in the orders table here with a matching value in the employees table, that means obviously that the sale has been made by the employee. But if we have a record with an employee ID of 6, what that means is that we have a website where people can purchase our goods, and so those records don't go through any particular employee. And when the sale is made direct from the website, we just put in an employee ID of 6 just to tell us that that came from the website, not from the employee. And then if we have an employee ID of 8 noted down there, that's because that record came from a reseller we use. There's a particular reseller we use, and whenever they make a sale for us, we note down the employee ID of 8 to represent that. So it doesn't correspond to an employee, corresponds to the reseller. So now if the question is, which are the orders which have been made by, which have just come from the website or the reseller, then the type of join that we need would be a left anti-join, because we want the records that come from the left table that don't match anything on the right. But if we wanted all of the orders, whether they came from an employee or from the website or from the reseller, then we want the left outer join, because we're interested in all the records from the left-hand table, whether or not they represent an employee on the right. And if we have a record that is on the right hand side, so there's an employee like Stephen Buchanan here that doesn't match anything on the left, that might be because Stephen Buchanan is the sales manager and he doesn't make any sales directly, but he's in the sales team. Okay, so if we're interested then in the data that comes from all of the salespeople in the entire sales team, then we want the right outer join, because that represents all the salespeople, whether or not they have matching orders. Okay, so you need to think always in terms of interpreting the data in terms of the business questions. When you know what it means for there to be a record on the left that doesn't match anything on the right, or vice versa, that is the clue to what type of join you should be doing. So now we know what the 6 different types of join are. In the next record, in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can work with a different data set. It's not actually going to be the dashboard in a day one, but slightly more complex record set in which we can combine merging, which of course means doing a join, and appending, which in SQL terms means doing a union query. We can combine those 2 different types of query together to get a dynamic data set based on our original starting tables. Good, all right, I'll see you in the next video.